So welcome to today's AMA and community call. This is our first public AMA and community call in months. It's been a very long time, but we are excited to be joined by the team from RoboVault today. So I'll let you guys introduce yourself. You definitely have a product that our community has been interested in for quite some time. So we have two members today. We have Come With Me, and we also have somewhere in here, SafetyBot. So why don't you guys start? Come with me, introduce yourself, and a little bit about your protocol.
Sure. My name is Alex. I've been with RoboVault for about close to 3 months now, basically. So I'm a recent addition. I handle the marketing side. And then we have SafetyBot, which is a co-founder, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hey guys. So one of the founders of RoboVault. We've been live I think since July last year, so almost 18 months now. But essentially what we do is automate delta neutral strategies on chain for users. So very similar to a lot of the strategies that you actually present on your YouTube channel, kind of doing borrowing, lending, creating the LP position, and then I guess the big part is automating a lot of the rebalancing, etc., to really try and hedge that IL away and kind of protect against the IL, which is one of the big downfalls of these kind of delta neutral strategies. If you don't time things right, you can actually get hit pretty hard. So we try and automate a lot of that for the users.
So we're definitely going to dig in to those strategies a lot more in this AMA. But from my understanding, what you guys do is a mixture of what we would have formerly called like pseudo delta neutral strategies, as well as some actual delta neutral strategies. Would that be an accurate characterization?
Yeah, so I think what's lab now, under like the formal definition, would be more kind of pseudo delta neutral strategies. What we found is to get like the perfectly hedged strategies, it's really, really difficult, and the liquidity is kind of just not there in terms of options, etc. And the fact that IL is kind of non-linear makes it almost impossible to perfectly hedge things. So I think what we have live now technically would be classed as pseudo delta neutral, whereas we kind of say delta neutral just because within DeFi that's kind of become the known language for our type of strategies.
Interesting. Certainly, I think a few of our communities are familiar with the PDN versus DN sort of distinction. PDN being, you hedge imperfectly, but you hedge effectively, and you have to rebalance that hedge now and again. DN or delta neutral being that there is, I don't want to call it an imperfect hedge, but there's no imperfect hedge. I don't want to call it a perfect hedge either, but effectively your long and short are equal and there's no impermanent loss involved. That said, I have looked at the analytics and some of the backtest data for what you have available, and it seems like your data or your strategies are have more reasonable yields. So the APYs are going to be less than 20%, it seems. However, they seem to perform with a lot less downside than maybe some of the competitors that have been in the space before.
Yeah, I'd say that's right. And then the other thing, like a big thing for us, is we've been very conservative in terms of like integrating with new protocols. So there might be like new opportunities we can chase to get higher yields, but I mean, all the hacks that we've seen in the last 12 months, even things like lending protocols, which you assume are very safe and just kind of the Oracle mess ups, like for example, Mango markets manipulation there. So we're very like risk averse with kind of integrating new protocols, which also potentially like limits getting like really high, like greater than 20% yield that potentially users can get manually.
So currently, is that whose mic is that? It's Dre. Okay, gotcha. Is there another mic that we have? Yep, Ape Friend. Gonna go ahead and mute you as well. All right. So I'm gonna post in the chat the link to the analytics page so that other people can look. And can you explain to me whether or not this is backtesting or historical data?
So what's live there is actually live data right now. So these are all kind of So the USDC vault, the ETH vault are all live, whereas the BTC, USDT, and AVAX, they're live but not open to the public. So it's all actual live historical data of what's actually going on right now. So any user can get. Whereas backtasted data we actually have in our GitHub page, and we do actually have an Excel model if anyone wants to like play around with that, the inputs in that. I'll just share a link to that in the chat.
Awesome. I think that certainly a few of us like Excels and sheets. Is this a better channel to ask AMA questions? Okay. So Cam33, I'm going to quickly answer your questions. You can ask the AMA questions to RoboVault here, but if you want to ask any AMA questions for DeFi in general, that'll be in the latter half of this hour. So in the last 30 minutes after questions for RoboVault have finished. Also, thank you for adding that link safety bot. So I'm going to go through a few of the yields, and maybe you can walk me through them. So we have Degen Vault USDC, Degen Vault WaveX, Wrapped ETH, and then RoboVault and RoboVault. So I'm assuming that the Degen Vaults are like looped strategies, and then the RoboVaults are the pseudo delta neutral strategies. Is that correct, or is there a different distinction being made here?
They're actually all doing pseudo delta neutral strategies. So we've actually before, I think about 6 months ago, we kind of were doing like combination of very low risk strategies like auto compounding, looping, etc. Whereas now we're kind of doing just purely the pseudo delta neutral strategy. Big part of that just being like risk tolerance, etc. So we kind of have just gone, when we initially deployed those first three, we were going with like 2 different names, whereas now we're going with just going to call things RoboVault. So this is more just us changing the naming convention and the API picking up the contract name of what's in there when we deployed at different times.
Okay, so all of these are pseudo delta neutral strategies. It's just the naming conventions have shifted over time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, perfect. And so when I'm seeing like Degen Vault USDC, RoboVault USDT, and then RoboVault BTCB and Wrapped ETH, is that just the denomination of the strategy? So like with the USDC, you're depositing and yielding USDC, but with the WaveX, you'd be depositing and yielding Wrapped AVAX?
Yeah, correct. So essentially the user will just deposit that asset and then they'll earn a yield in that asset. So if you're depositing like USDT, you're earning 7.63% annually on that USDC based off the current performance.
Awesome, perfect. And so if I understand correctly, you guys started on the Phantom ecosystem, which is probably why if you go to Phantom on the analytics page, you can see just a very large variety of RoboVaults. You have also RoboVault USDC B and C and Wrap Phantom B and C. Then you have some tests as well. Can you sort of talk us through all of the different strategies you have on the Phantom network, or rather the ones that you think people should be interested in, rather than ones that are maybe a little bit outdated or no longer being supported?
Yeah, so I think in terms of like our focus right now, like our most interesting strategies, like the pseudo delta neutral ones, are really on Avalanche at the moment. So a big reason for that, I'm sure like users that have used Phantom, the network itself, have found like gas flags to be like extremely volatile during times of congestion. So we just didn't actually feel like 100% confident running our like automated strategies, the pseudo delta neutral ones on Phantom, because a big part of this is being 100% confident the rebalances are going to happen when the market moves. So what's on Phantom is actually really just like auto compounding strategies that aren't that interesting. And I would say like those are more just there for historical reasons, for users that have kind of forgot they've had funds in there. Because we know some users, even though we've told them like our most interesting strategies and the better performing ones are going to be on Avalanche, there's still some users that have stayed on Phantom.
Okay, so that's actually good to know that the Phantom strategies are maybe not as supported now and a little bit less interesting than the Avalanche ones. You're also on the Polygon chain, and I see you have two strategies on Polygon. The APYs are a little bit low, right? You have one that's technically negative 3.6 and then one that's 2.65. Are those strategies that you're anticipating will grow in popularity or will grow in APYs in the future? Or are those also strategies that are maybe a little bit less supported than the ones on Avalanche?
Yeah, similar to Phantom, like these were ones we read in tests, and kind of just it's coming through on our API. And also to add some more info on that, we're also testing. There's a few others that you can't see here, other chains like Optimism, Optrum. We're also testing on. Yeah, so we're testing on a bunch of chains, but in terms of the most supported ones right now, it's really Avalanche. Big part being we found the infrastructure really reliable there. We see there's really good liquidity, which means we can be like confident that the yields aren't going to kind of dilute if like a bunch of funds get added. Whereas on some of these other chains, that's not always the case. Yeah, so really Avalanche at the moment is where we're mainly focusing. We also don't want to just go to like a bunch of chains all at once because we do actually still have a bunch of R&D work in the pipeline to really improve the strategies as well. Or not so much improve, but do newer strategies with other protocols.
So I'm going to try at this point to share my screen. This can go well or poorly with my screen recording software, but I want to look at some of the strategies you have available. It looks like you guys can see my screen. Maybe. I can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Does it work?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, fantastic. So I think this is probably one of the most interesting vaults that you have for a lot of users. I mean, you guys have a lot of interesting products, but this one might appeal to some people because it is a BTC denominated vault. And you're telling, let me get this correct. You're saying this is historical value and not backtest data.
Yeah, so that's like live. So obviously you can see the TVL's only $50 because we've made this vault private, but we've been running this since late September. And basically like we track and monitor the performance of that to see like exactly how it's performing. This one should be going live quite soon. I think next week is the target. We're pretty rigorous. We're quite slow with our deployments. Part of that just being, obviously, we want to be like super safe with security. Because obviously, as everyone's seen, like things can go wrong when teams rush in DeFi. But yeah, that's like completely like real historical data of something that's actually happening on chain at the moment, like a live strategy.
And do you know if I mean, it'll be hard to just say this with any level of certainty, but do you anticipate that increasing the TVL here into, the hundreds of thousands or low millions will dramatically affect the yield or APY? Which is to say, are you using LPs to get this yield? And have you anticipated what effect you might have on those LPs by adding a lot of volume?
Yeah, so there'd definitely be some dilution with like adding TVL. I'd say looking at how big the LP size, we can definitely handle like the low millions and still get like quite competitive yield on that BTC strategy, just based off like the LP size that's available. But yeah, obviously like because we're using LPs in this strategy, there is always going to be some dilution if things like ramp up. But for like some context, like in the past, when we were on Phantom, like there was a point in time where one of our vaults, I think our USDT vault, was I think more than 50% of the TVL of like Spirit Swaps, USDT / FTM LP, and we were still able to like perform extremely well and like outcompete other yields available. So we can handle like decent size there on the LPs. But it's always like limited to how much that actual base LP is. Because for example, if the base LP was like $100,000, then we're not going to handle much. But if that base LP is say
it's already pretty large,
10 million, then yeah.
So I
So
guess
it's really functional.
another question is, do you guys plan on putting caps on these vaults, or because you're tapping into sort of larger LPs, are you not worried about capping at the moment?
Yeah, generally we start like even at the moment we have caps on all our vaults, and generally kind of do like a stepwise. So for example, like this BTC vault, we'll probably like release it with a quite low cap of maybe like 1 million, I'd say, and then we'll like make sure it's like still performing and able to handle that TVL, and then let's say we reach that cap, we'll like crunch some numbers, see, okay, like what can we go to without like really like sacrificing on performance, and we'd up the caps again. So generally we take this stepwise approach, where we start with the relatively low cap initially and just slowly bump it up.
Right, and I've seen a lot of other projects do that, and certainly, as someone who, yeah, I understand why you would do that and appreciate your doing that. So I'm looking at the vaults you have available on Avalanche right now, and just going through them one by one. So we see the 3% on USDC, which has about 2 million. So clearly there's a lot of interest in these sorts of yields and this sort of returns on USDC, and then we see. Wrapped AVAX. This looks like a test vault as well because of the $1.54. So I'm going to assume you guys are still sort of playing with that or haven't released this one yet. And then we can go to Wrapped Ethereum, which definitely seems like a live one. We have $103,000 in there right now and a very, very nice looking chart. Though my dates are off. Is there a way to reset the dates here? Oh, okay.
I think
Top
the
right.
screen you're sharing is still the UI, but yeah, on the top right, or maybe
Forever. I
my
just won forever. Last 5 years. There we go.
5 years.
Oh, geez. Do that. Okay, that works. So like this is a very good looking graph, right? And it looks like it's been open since let's say three months, more
We
than 3
can
months
see it.
ago. Go ahead.
We cannot see it. You have to drag it on the other screen maybe, or
yeah. I think we're
Oh,
just seeing the
we're seeing the
RoboVault
homepage,
yeah.
the Vaults page actually.
you're seeing the vault page?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe sharing
probably
like the other
streaming and
screen.
yeah, you're probably streaming the
Darn you,
browser,
streaming.
right?
Okay, yeah. Let's stop streaming. Okay, give it a smiley face, and then this is what I wanted. Okay, so here you can see this. Can you guys see it now? Because I can see you
Yeah,
guys seeing it.
yeah,
Okay,
now
cool.
it's
Yeah.
So very nice looking graph for about over 3 months now. So this vault looks like it has TVL of roughly $100,000. Is that because it's capped at $100,000 right now? And if so, do you plan on increasing that cap soon?
Actually, like we just haven't really seen much popularity for ETH on our AVAX. We also haven't really like pushed the marketing on this one. And we found like, for example, like our USDC vault just gets the most interest. I think that's potentially ETH holders, because it's on AVAX. Maybe ETH holders don't want to move away from ETH-based chains. Would be my like logic for why it's just not gotten much adoption.
Sure. And maybe they see this is a sort of comparable yield to being on, say, Convex or something with ST ETH or Rocket Pool ETH. And you know, if you're going to
Yeah.
compete with that. Okay, cool. So it looks like right now you have the USDC, which is live, the Wrapped Ethereum, which is live, and then everything else is in test mode. Is that an accurate statement? And then I think you've already mentioned it, but can you reiterate when these are going to come out of test and be sort of made publicly available?
Yeah, so yeah, that's correct. So it's just USDC and ETH that are live. We're aiming to get the USDT and the Bitcoin vault out, I'd say next week. And those have been like performing quite well. Like I think much more competitive than like our current live vaults. Then the AVAX, I'd say like following shortly after that. Yeah, so that's kind of the goal right now. So at some point next week, obviously we can't put an exact time on it because it's just we want to be. It's still like just some final tests that we always want to make before making something available to the public.
Sure, definitely understand. So before we go into the questions that we have quite a list of in the chat on the side, I wanted to ask you: do you guys plan on releasing a token to additionally incentivize your vaults? If so, when? If not, why did you choose not to go with a token?
So it's kind of, we plan on doing it, but we're not 100% certain when and actually if we will go through with it. So firstly, there's kind of legal implications that we want to be like 100% confident of, that, you know, like us as founders, we're like docs, so we're not gonna eventually go to jail or anything like that. And then also kind of we want to make sure, like, spend a bunch of time just digging into the mechanics to be confident that we don't just end up as another protocol that gets, you know, farmed and dumped into oblivion, and it's kind of people who invested in token just get completely rolled, because all you did was just offer farming rewards that got completely dumped to zero. Yeah, and then really just like thinking about those two things quite deeply before kind of just going for it. And then like internally, we are doing like a bunch of R&D on kind of additional strategies, things that we can do to really improve the yields, etc. And I don't really see, like, from a strategy side, why just take this shortcut to get some quick growth when there's like much more sustainable things we can do. Because the reality is we are a business that wants like long-term success, not just some short-term cash grab. So yeah, that probably doesn't answer the question well.
I think it
Just
does.
leaves you
Yeah,
with a big
absolutely. You're looking
question
for
mark.
healthy longevity over explosive brevity, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Of course, I do love the crazy high yields, and I would be the first to admit that I would just be dumping the asset as a farm token. So I get the hesitance to want to release something that sole purpose is just to, you know, sort of artificially prop up yields. Let's jump into the questions now from the community. I have to scroll up quite a ways to actually get to them because it looks like you guys got a lot of questions. The first few come from Cam33. So I will allow you guys to answer any of or all of these questions in whatever in whatever way you want to. So I'm going to try to get through them quickly, and then you guys can answer them either scattershot or in whatever way you find most reasonable. Okay, considering bridge security concerns, which I think we're all aware of, do you put thought into building on chains that offer native assets, USDC for example, instead of maybe USDCE, or is that not a factor? So I guess we can stop there and just have you guys answer that question. Is exposure to bridge wrapped assets a concern that you are aware of or thinking about?
Yeah, yeah, it is, like, to an extent. Like, we don't use bridges in our strategies, even though like there's quite good yields to like just farm on the bridges. We don't use them because we're like pretty scared of the risks. In terms of the strategies, we do use like native USDC in that USDC vault, but that's less so a concern than actually like LPing into a bridge directly. Yeah, so it is something we think about.
Do you guys use any like multi-chain or assets like USDCE or?
So I mean, the WETH is like a bridged version of ETH,
Right.
obviously, like it's coming from ETH. The USDC we're using is native. The native to AVAX. The BTC we're using is native to AVAX, and the USDT is native to AVAX as well. So it's really just that ETH
Right.
vault.
Certainly, and you know, I think if well, I don't want to, no famous last words, but if you were to trust a bridge wrapped asset, the .e derivatives are generally the way to go. Let's move on to the next question. Does your keeper serve a different purpose than Chainlink or Gelato, or did you just want to add redundancy to make your system more robust?
Yeah, so like we've kind of had some bad experiences when we were on Phantom in the early days of launching. Like, because we were just using our own keepers, like pretty much we were just running 24-hour shifts, like the two founders, just making sure things weren't breaking. So we use all three to just have like 100% redundancy. Like, we know because there's some borrowing element that there's no, like, the vault's never going to get liquidated because we're 100% confident in like all three of those keepers. There's no single point of failure, and also just the rebalancing to protect against IL.
Definitely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really just like 100% redundancy is why we use all three.
What goes into deciding your collateral ratios?
Yeah, I think like at the moment, like they're lower than they could be, which could improve the yield. So a big part of that is we're like quite risk averse. We pretty much have done some modeling on just looking at what's kind of been the biggest price moves in a small amount of time to make sure if there are those, really crazy events where price moves, like 30% in a few minutes, we're not going to get liquidated. Even if that happens, and even though we are like really confident in the keepers now at this stage using all three, even if like for whatever reason all three failed, we still are very, very unlikely to face a liquidation event.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really based off like us avoiding kind of
Liquidation or
very,
risk
very
of.
worst case scenarios.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
What goes into the decision on which assets to pair with the user's initial deposit asset in your strategies? This is a bit of a question. Is it simply APR? So I think what they're asking is when you're deciding which LPs to go into, how do you choose?
Yeah, it's really just like LPs and liquidity available on the different LPs. So making sure we're not going to dilute the returns. Previously, at some points, for example, like sometimes we can choose between two different assets. So we might choose, and it's like very similar. We might try and choose the one that has like the highest liquidity if the returns look very similar, just to like avoid the dilution. And at some points, we can like look at things like correlation between the assets. So for example, if there was, say, let's imagine like a W8 vault, and we had the choice between pairing with USDC or AVAX, and like the APRs were equivalent there on the LPs, we'd potentially choose the AVAX because it might have higher correlation. It's just like one consideration, which
Right.
means like less potential AL, so you potentially take less. You potentially get higher yields, even though the LP APRs are the same.
That's right. Okay, the next set of questions come from Freak Show. The first one, actually, let's knock out a brief question from our friend at Aperture, McDavid. I believe this question is probably relating to Alpha Homora, but I don't want to make too many assumptions. And the question is, does RoboVault have any plans to build vaults that may inadvertently increase supply on Iron Bank for any assets? Asking for a friend who has a vault that depends on the IB supply being good. So do you guys have any plans to increase the supply of any assets on the Iron Bank?
We were like testing some strategies out there, but we're not in like any major rush. I mean, our code, we can like pretty much switch to most major lenders, be it like a fork of, be it RV, a fork of Compound, etc. But yeah, like I think also on, because we are doing like some lending / borrowing on our strategies, similar to Alpha Homora in a way. Yeah, we do actually have to consider the borrowing rate as well. So it's like a consideration for us. Whereas RV has, because that's what we're using right now, that has like a lot more liquidity, so we can kind of be confident. That's like actually another consideration with the collateral ratios. If like our vaults are a certain size, we can potentially start to like impact the borrowing rates. And we might, yeah, it's like the interest rate curve, I'm sure you're aware, is pretty inefficient in many ways. Where like sometimes like at higher utilization amounts, like just very small changes in the amount you borrow has a big jump in the borrowing rates.
That's right.
But yeah, it's like, yeah, that's like a bit of a tangent. So it's like, yeah, but Iron Bank is something we are looking at, but not in any kind of rush to implement.
Okay. Okay, now let's get back to Freak Show. Let's see. Okay, we'll go through these. Do you know if the Phantom Foundation is working on anything that will make gas prices more stable and allow you to keep building there?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Michael
Listen,
Tong, hello.
Yeah, it's not a question for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's jump to the next question. What is the status so far on your new strategy? Oh yeah, I think these may have been answered, but the status so far on your new strategies, will they still require a single-sided asset to enter? I guess that's the question that hasn't been answered yet. Or will they still just require a single-sided asset to enter? Which I believe the answer is yes, but I'll let you guys go for that.
Yeah, so we've got like a bunch of new strategies in like R&D phase. Some of them actually like being tested, but yeah, pretty much the focus is all on kind of single asset vaults. So some that might utilize GMX, some that potentially. So at the moment, you would have seen we're doing some borrowing to create that LP position. But for example, we could just instead of borrowing, actually just have a USDC vault and a AVAX vault and combine those assets to create the LP position. So almost internalizing that borrowing and then applying the same like hedging or pseudo hedging mechanics. But yeah, like all our strategies will be focused on single assets. So just use a deposits USDC, ETH or whatever.
Awesome, perfect. I was going to ask the next question, but you've kind of already answered it, and I do want to make sure that everyone's gotten to. So the part of the question that you have answered is what you look at when evaluating where to farm. The question that I guess you guys haven't answered yet is how much time is spent looking for like LPs that are interesting to you versus everything else that you do.
I'd say like looking is maybe like less than 5%. Like even if we find like good opportunities, it's a lot of like code reviews, making sure like that protocol is safe, then like just like writing and testing the code. So yeah, looking is like a super small time, very small
Okay.
part of it.
And I imagine because you're
Which is
looking
another
probably for.
reason why.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say like that's another reason why we're somewhat like hesitant to just chase opportunities. So there could be
Right.
like some new protocols that launches. If there's like a long lead time for us to actually like develop / test that strategy, like that protocol could be farmed to death before we even get ready to launch there. So we're kind of trying to like focus on the blue chip protocols that we are confident are going to stay around for a long time and not just get farmed and dumped to oblivion.
Right. Yeah. And I imagine like you're also looking at the largest TVLs and the most consistency and your considerations are already sort of narrowed down to a pretty specific group of potential protocols. Let's see. Is there any way I could invest? Okay. So Apron, I think is asking if there's any way to invest in your protocol or you guys as a project. I'm not sure I'm understanding that correct, but maybe that's what they're asking because we already know how to invest in the opportunities you guys have. I think they're asking if there's any way to invest in you guys, but I could be incorrect about that. So
Cool. Is this the question? Is there an ambassador program?
yes.
Or yeah, cool. So I guess like first part, actually we'll be launching like a form of like referral program where like anyone can create like a referral link to kind of market us and try and refer new users. In terms of like investing, like we are doing a seed equity round, but that's like more closed. But if anyone is really like keen on that, they can DM me. I'm happy to like chat about it more. But yeah, the point of this is not to like market that. So it's just move on from that investing.
Okay. The next one. Let's see. I guess the question could be more specifically, why does RoboVault prefer Avalanche now for development? And then, does this bring any advancements to your ecosystem? And you've already sort of answered you're exploring optimistic Ethereum. So I guess what I would want out of this question is, could you tell us one more time, like, what your plans are on optimistic Ethereum and sort of if you have an available timeline for that?
Yeah, so at the moment we're really just like testing a few different chains, but we're not like in a massive rush. So with like Optimism, Arbitrum, the infrastructure there from our point of view is still quite immature. So we'd want to just like observe things, watch them play out. For example, even like on Optimism, Chainlink keepers aren't live yet. And as we mentioned before, we want to use like Chainlink Gelato plus our end keepers to really be like 100% confident and make sure there's redundancy. Also, in terms of like why we prefer Avalanche, like the diplomatic question is like just like gas, etc. We found like gas to be like much more predictable on Avalanche. And then like just we've also seen like a lot of liquidity move away from Phantom and other protocols. Yeah, so hope that answers all those questions.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to see you guys on Optimistic Ethereum for a number of reasons, least of which being that, Lido right now is doing some incredible incentive programs for like ST, ETH. And if you guys could just like tap into that, it's single side ETH vault right there. But, all things in good time. So the next one, do you guys have any plans to integrate with any insurance protocols to edge against I think that's a smart contract risks?
Yeah, so like for insurance, we've like chatted to a few. I think insurance like very tough to like really nail in DeFi. But we're like chatting to a few, and it's something like we do want to offer as we scale up. We're actually chatting with DJs who I'm not sure people are familiar with, but the idea is that won't actually specifically be insurance, but we can provide some protection on the future yield. So almost offer a product where if say the APR over the next 2 weeks is below X%, they can kind of protect against that. So looking at kind of that form of like protection as well as the full insurance as well.
Got it. I've also seen some decentralized insurance that are like on protocol that have been pretty interesting, like where people can participate in it for like a small yield, but then have the chance to get totally wrecked if the protocol gets hurt.
Yeah, we actually did write some like prototypes of, I guess you could almost say it's like an insurance within of itself, where we can have one liquidity provider earning like a fixed yield, and then another liquidity provider taking on the like tranche risk of the volatile yield. So actually do have like a prototype of that, but it would be like sometime before it goes live. And,
Sure.
and it's not like the actual priority at the moment.
It's pretty cool that you have it though. The next question from no one is, with single digit yields on the platform, what are the plans to attract users? This is a good question because there are a lot of other sort of competitive yields out there, and I imagine your answer is that, well, you guys are offering real yields or relatively consistent yields while everyone else is offering like hyperinflationary yields. What else would you add to that answer?
Yeah, so I think like we've seen consistently like our yields generally like can compete quite well with everyone else. And often we can like outcompete others who are providing kind of protocol yields plus token yields. So I think for us the advantage is what we want to go after is the guys who have like who want to like stay in a position for a long time, and they know that they can't just like stay somewhere and farm a token because that token yield is not going to be sustainable. So I think we just need to figure out who the right users are for us. Like a big thing for us is we already have like a really good track record over like past 18 months of delivering quite solid yields. I think right now, just because the market's crap, they're not as good as they have been. But the fact that we've survived the past 18 months without a hack is like a big selling point in and of itself.
Certainly,
Yeah.
Safety and beating basic TradFi yields is big. But even you have 8% bonds out there, so you are now competing with a more competitive TradFi landscape as well. Okay, next one from Themis. I think Themis. What would you consider the top 3 risks for using RoboVault?
Yeah, this is like a really good question. I'd say, like, obviously our strategies utilize other protocols, so we're doing like money Legos. So naturally we inherit the other kind of smart contract risks from them. Plus we have our own smart contracts as well. Like they've been audited and reviewed, but there's always risks there to be like completely objective. Other ones, I'd say our keepers, the fact that there is some reliant on an external party for the automation to kind of try and do that pseudo hedging of the position is a risk. Like we try and mitigate that by using Chainlink, Gelato, and our own custom gappers. And then, yeah, I think just market risk in general. Like with these pseudo delta neutral strategies, there is just some like short-term exposure to really volatile markets. But we found like the drawdowns, even in the most craziest of market conditions, are generally like pretty low. Like I'd say below like 0.3%. And we actually have some insurance mechanics built in to cover those very small losses when IL can outweigh the fees that we earn.
That's pretty cool. I'd actually be interested in learning more about those tokenomics. The next question is, do you expect 2-digit yields in the near future? Kind of a spicy question, but I too am sort of interested.
I mean, I think it's like very tough because like often, for example, like actually we do have like a vault right now that we're running in test that's not open to the public that's getting greater than 10% on USDC. But yeah, like our yields are always going to be very market driven. So like, for example, even what we've seen over the last 12 months, just every single yield in DeFi in general has like dropped significantly. Yeah, so I think it just really is going to depend on what happens on the market and what you said before about TradFi bond yields going up. Potentially that even like increases the yields in DeFi. Maybe that just like lags a bit. So I'd say, yeah, I think we can get like double-digit yields right now in a private vault. So it's not open to the public because they're still testing it.
Right.
But it's it really just like depends on the market. And often if say you get that double-digit yield, and then like more liquidity comes in, that opportunity might just like disappear quickly as well.
Certainly,
Just
definitely.
alpha's only like for a short time, really.
Right. Yeah, you get something good in there, and then immediately everyone wants to go into it, and then everyone kills it by by jumping into it because it's so good. All right, let's see. Yeah, I imagine your smart contracts are verified. Let's say, who is your auditor, if you have an auditor, and do you audit everything before shipping it, or do you have some general code that's been audited that you use for every strategy?
Yeah, so our current contracts that have been audited were audited by Extrapy. They're like quite a small firm. We are also getting an audit done by PeckShield. Should be done quite soon. But like our process, not everything 100% is audited. Like we actually had some like more audits done, and the experience we found was like pretty bad. We actually had one, I think like 12 months ago, we had an audit done and they didn't detect a vulnerability, and we went live. We didn't lose any funds, but we had to like shut everything down. So it kind of has scarred us. So what we've done is like we've built up like pretty rigorous test suite. We've got some like external reviews by actual experts. Like for example, like some of the strategies have been reviewed by a young V2, a young strategist who kind of really knows like their stuff on the security side. So yeah, not everything's audited because the reality is there's just not always great auditors out there unless you're willing to either wait a long time or pay a shit ton of money.
Right. So you have some internal audits, it sounds like, by some sort of trusted security experts, and then you have some additional audits, but not everything at the moment is audited. Is that a good fair summation?
Yeah, yeah. And if anyone like wants to read more, we have like a pretty long Medium article explaining like our kind of security process. I'll actually just post the link if anyone wants to read it.
Okay, I'm gonna skip the next question because you have answered that you do have caps on some of your vaults and plan to have caps on the newer vaults, but not all vaults are capped. So that sort of answers Hanji. The next one, depending on the services you provide for the community, do you think that the power of your community can lead to project to develop? Oh my. Let me try to read this one again. Depending on the services you provide for the community, do you think that the power of your community can lead your project to develop globally? I'll let you I'll let you take a shot at that question, as you understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like community has like pretty huge impact in crypto. To be honest, like, and potentially like us not having a token, just like hurts us because potentially like that's one of the biggest things that helps with token is you automatically get a community of bag holders who are gonna do like free marketing for you because they hold your token.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say community can help a lot in growth, etc. Even like communities help. We do have like a really good community that have helped in like just providing feedback, a bunch of not just like growth itself, but helping with like improving the product over time.
All right,
So
so
yeah, I'd say like
we're gonna have to sort of speed up the questions here, unfortunately, because we have 10. I did not think there were gonna be so many questions. So thank you from the community for being so interested. All right, I'm gonna try to shorten a few of these. The next one is from Angelica, which is basically what are the major risks to the protocol in the event of black swan events and hypervolatility on the LPs.
so. I think like the biggest risk like for Black Swan event would be like the keepers failing completely. Again, like us using all three really tries to reduce that. And then if let's say we just saw, I don't know, the price of the tokens we're LPing in move. Let's just say like we use our USDC vault, we borrow AVAX. Let's just say something happened with AVAX where someone market sold like 50% of the supply and we saw price like drop 90%. That would be kind of, I guess, a black swan for us because then there is actually some big exposure to IL that we need to protect against. Yeah, so I'd say those are the two biggest black swan events.
And
Just
I
like
think that that's sort of like to be expected. This is similar to what happened with Alpaca and Phantom when Phantom sort of exploded right after they released their PDN vault, which is unfortunate because a lot of people were super excited about that one. And then, that was when all that Phantom collateral was locked up and then slowly liquidated. Okay, but let's continue moving on. I'm going to skip Sian Dag de Viren for now because you've already talked about your audits and also that you guys are sort of like Lego block DeFi where your risks are the risks of your Lego blocks. Let's see. The next one, let's see which one is kind of new. Your own wallet app? Okay. Do you guys have plans on creating a wallet app? That can be a quick yes or no.
well, no
Okay. Didn't think so. Let's see. Okay. Oh, well, they might begin through these faster than I thought. Okay, from DK Nugo, we have USDC Vault on Phantom was launched in April, just before the market crash. How did you manage that volatility and the huge gas fees to rebalance? Because this is one of the places where Alpaca, despite doing their best, failed, and their drawdown was over 25%. But according to the analytics dashboard, there was no drawdown at all in your vaults. Was this a miracle, or what happened?
Yes. Yeah, so actually, like, because like us PDN vaults had been live already for, I'd say, like more than 6 months. At that point, we'd actually like built up pretty reliable keepers by that point where we actually did handle the crazy gas and crazy volatility pretty well in that period. Yeah, so we actually did do extremely well. I think even we chatted to the Alpaca guys after they had their big drawdowns, and it seemed like they just hadn't gotten their keepers reliable enough to handle that volatility. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a miracle. It was just a lot of hard work to get to that point where we could really handle those reliable times, but that did cost us a lot of money in gas. Like the gas costs were pretty insane. So yeah, we handled it, but we took a pretty big hit because yeah, I think that was like big part of that was like the Solidly stuff at the same time, and then there's like just crazy liquidations, and gas was just insane. Like users were just complaining they couldn't get transactions through. But yeah, that's kind of,
It was definitely a wild time in the
did
Phantom
handle it.
ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's see. Let's keep moving on. We have Oh my gosh, you guys really asked a lot of questions. What is the utility of token in the ecosystem? Okay, you don't have a token yet, so we're going to skip that one. Can you talk about some outstanding features that can make your product stand out and give a competitive edge amongst competitors? This is a decent question, right? So you guys have a lot of competitors. I think we can name a few from, like Solana, like maybe even Delta One, kind of being an automated PDN vault. You have Alpaca clearly being one of the ones. Even the we have Aperture in here with McDavid. They were one of the big automated PDN guys back in the day. So what do you think makes you guys stand out amongst your competition?
Yeah, so I think the fact that we've actually put a ton of time into this off-chain infrastructure actually um, gives us like much more confidence that we can reliably manage these PDN strats in pretty much all market conditions. We actually have like a bunch of other stuff in that security article I linked where we actually kind of monitor the protocols we run on top of. So, for example, people familiar with the Scream,
Yep.
with Phantom ecosystem would have seen Scream got a bunch of bad debt. Because we have a bunch of monitoring and alerts, we were actually able to catch that in real time. And basically, like even though our strategies use Scream, we like got our funds out well before like they actually like incurred the bad debt because we saw something funny was going on. So all those alerts actually potentially protect us from the long tail events for like the money Legos we're building on as well. So I think that over time removes a bunch of risk that other protocols might not necessarily be doing that level of granularity and monitoring that we're doing to manage risk.
Pretty decent answer. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is, how big and active is the RoboVault community?
So that is, I think on Twitter we have like 8K followers.
Pretty much.
Discord, I'd say
Around
it was
half, I think.
Yeah.
Three.
Active. Yeah, active. It varies a lot. It always depends on like the market, how the market's
Of course,
going.
yeah, definitely.
When the market's going good, we have like a lot more people active. When the market's bad, things like get a bit quiet. Yeah.
Okay, this is I don't know. I'll be interested to see how you guys tackle this question. If you were to list 3 key performance metrics for the year, what would they be?
I'd say like APR is obviously like the most important for our users. Then let's say if we did like value at risk, like looked at basically like what were the worst drawdowns for our vaults, because obviously they're not like perfectly only up, so there can be tiny drawdowns. That's like quite important metric. And then for us as business, obviously like revenue is always like metric we care about. So even like TVL or number of users is like quite two like very important things just to make sure we're on the right track.
It's a pretty solid metrics for the type of protocol that you guys have. Cool. So a bunch of the questions are a little bit nonsensical, so I'm going to skip them and then scroll down a bit. The last question is Q4, right? Do you guys have any? You've sort of mentioned this a few times, but I'll give you multiple times to reiterate yourself. What are your plans for Q4 for your protocol?
Yeah, so obviously like new vaults coming out for like more assets, then some new strategies. Hopefully, I don't know if they'll get into production, but doing like a lot of R&D. For example, can we do a GLP strat? Can we do pseudo delta neutral strategies on top of concentrated liquidity providers? Is one thing we're working on at the moment as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so really just getting more vaults live, improving the yields, and kind of laying the foundations for the market actually changing, because ultimately, like we want to be set up for long term.
I would love to pick your brain about what you guys think of of Rage Protocol's use of flash loans for neutralizing delta. on their GLP neutral strategy. Of course, that would take a long time to discuss, but you are in the community, and so are they. So if you guys ever want to, communicate about that, maybe if you guys could use flash loans to hedge some of your delta, because it's an interesting setup. But I won't get into it because we have 2 minutes left, and I want to get a few more of these questions. Let's see. I'm sure they do. I'm gonna see if we can get to. I mean, from Beremo we have 7 questions. There's no way we can get to all of those. So let's see if I can pick out one that. Okay, so I see there's an institutional investor funding round, as well as their divided pool, which will be different. So can you break up the dividend pool? How much does retail dividend receive, and how much does institutional investors receive? Oof. I know you guys mentioned that may be a question that they asked privately, but can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I guess at the moment it's kind of like, because we don't have a token, there's like pretty much no fee sharing with like token holders, which normally would happen. Where we see it is like at the moment we're going to retain that 100% fee, and then we are looking into the token model where potentially we split the fees, something like 50-50 between us as a company, and the rest going to like the DAO. But that also complicates things, because as soon as you have revenue sharing with like a token, it becomes a security, which makes things annoying from a regulatory standpoint, which is like why I mentioned before, we want to be really careful from the legal thing before we handle stuff and launch a token. And then the other thing is we're doing that referral program, as mentioned before, where people will have the opportunity to basically like refer users and get some share of those fees.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think that definitely addresses the spirit of the question there. So this went a lot longer than I thought. I was hoping to do like a whole half hour of DeFi exploration at the end of this, but you guys had so many questions and answered them so well that we don't have time for that. So maybe we'll do another community call sometime to make up for the lack of community call this week. But thank you, RoboVault, for sticking around for the full hour for a full, very robust AMA with tons of questions. So incredibly grateful that you guys stopped by, and yeah, I'm gonna let you guys sort of finish it off here. But I just wanted to give you my final appreciation. Do you have any last words?
No, cheers. Thanks for having us. Appreciate all the tough questions, breaking all the holes in making sure we know what we're doing. So always good. Keep us on our feet. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I think Come With Me's dropped details for like website, socials.
Yeah.
In the chat, if anyone is interested in learning more, or like just can DM anyone in our team as well. Feel free to hit us up. Always welcome. Always happy to answer more questions.
Absolute pleasure, and I'll be in touch with you about who you thought asked the best questions, and I'll do an announcement in the near future announcing those winners. So thanks again for coming, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.